Coming up on Mountain News at 5:30, Kentucky is facing a school counselor shortage, how education leaders are trying to remedy the issue. And tech titans are huddling with lawmakers and even critics regarding artificial intelligence.
And we are tracking cooler, drier air for now, but some changes on the way for the weekend. Those details coming up as Mountain News at 5:30 starts right now.
Dedicated to Southern and Eastern Kentucky, this is WYMT Mountain News at 5:30.
Good evening, I'm Steve Hensley. When it comes to the number of counselors in schools, Kentucky receives a failing grade. Roughly 52% of districts meet the goal of one counselor per 250 students. As Samantha Valentino shows us, education leaders are asking the state to work towards improving that grade.
Our students need to feel safe and secure in the environment in which they're learning. And
Eddie Campbell is the president of the Kentucky Education Association. He says school counselors are vital to the operation of Kentucky's schools, but also in supporting Kentucky's students.
About 16% of students in Kentucky between the ages of 3 and 17 have depression and anxiety. So they need those mental health supports in our public schools, and our counselors provide that.
The Kentucky School Safety and Resiliency Act, passed in 2019, sets the goal for districts to employ at least one counselor in each school and one for every 250 students. According to the Office of the State School Security Marshal's annual report, 48% of Kentucky schools are not meeting the 1 to 250 goal. The statewide counselor to student ratio is currently sitting at 1 to 306. 118 Kentucky schools do not have any school counselors.
We need to make sure that we're reaching that goal. Our students do need those supports. You know, if you think about what's gone on in Kentucky over the past year or a couple of years, we've lived through COVID. We had a major tornado in the western part of the state. We had a major flood in the eastern part of the state. So our students have lived through trauma.
Campbell says it's not just counselors, though. There are shortages across the board in education. In Frankfort, Samantha Valentino, WKYT.
Kentucky is not alone in the struggle to find school counselors. The American School Counselor Association says only 2 states meet the criteria of at least one counselor for every 250 students. Those states are Vermont and New Hampshire.
Well, the calendar may say September, but it feels more like October across the mountains this afternoon. Here's a live look from the WYMT studio. You can see plenty of blue sky, also a few clouds back there as well. But overall, we are nice into this afternoon, and that will continue into this evening. That current temperature is 75 degrees. That dew point down to 55, and that measures the amount of moisture we have in the atmosphere. And when that number is below 60, it feels very nice out there. And that's the case as you go into this evening. Up on the radar, we are dry thanks to high pressure, and that will continue as we go into tonight, also into your Thursday and Friday as well. And those temperatures right now are below average. Most of us in the 70s, 76 for Jackson, 74 in Pikeville, and 73 over in Clintwood at this hour. As we go into tonight, though, check out these low temperatures. Most of us in the middle to lower 50s, but some upper 40s cannot be ruled out in those cooler pockets. So giving you the first alert for possibly a light jacket as you wake up and walk out the door on Thursday. Same story on Friday, but we are watching out for some rain chances at times into this weekend. Those details on the way in just a few minutes. Steve?
Cameron, thanks. After being on the run for nearly 2 weeks, the convicted killer who escaped from a Pennsylvania prison is now in custody. Danilo Cavalcante had been on the run since August 31st, but was captured this morning. The manhunt drew hundreds of law enforcement officials to the area and left the surrounding community gripped in fear. Last month, Cavalcante was convicted of first-degree murder for the killing of his former girlfriend.
Our nightmare is finally over and the good guys won. We owe a debt of gratitude to all of the first responders for their tireless and dedicated efforts in bringing this fugitive to justice.
Cavalcante is expected to be arraigned on a felony escape charge. Lawmakers called together some of the leading artificial intelligence designers, ethicists, and public policy experts for an all-day forum on the pros and cons of the emerging technology and what Congress's role should be in regulating it. CBS's Skylar Henry has more from Capitol Hill.
Tech giants Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, and others arrived on Capitol Hill for a closed-door discussion with lawmakers about how to move ahead with artificial intelligence.
It was very civilized discussion, actually, among some of the smartest people in the world.
The point of the forum was to hear from nearly 24 of the leading AI innovators about how the government can create legislation that allows AI to thrive while putting guardrails in place to prevent potential catastrophes. Tesla CEO Elon Musk was among those talking about the risks that AI poses to humanity.
This meeting may go down in history as being very important for the future of civilization.
There did appear to be broad support for some kind of regulatory oversight of AI.
I think it's really important that the government does put sensible policy in place. This is obviously a super powerful technology and really important to get right.
While nearly everyone agreed that Congress has a role to play, they also agreed that it'll be hard to legislate AI because it's such a fast-growing industry making advances every day.
You want to be able to maximize the benefits and minimize the harms. And that will be our difficult job.
Even if lawmakers can create legislation, it still has to pass through a sharply divided Congress.
This was a bipartisan effort. The idea here was to educate as many of our members as we possibly could, and we had some great teachers in there.
More than 60 senators attended the forum, but some skipped it, protesting the fact that the forum wasn't open to the public. Skylar Henry, CBS News, Capitol Hill.
The European Union was the first to create artificial intelligence regulations when it passed the AI Act back in June. Republican U.S. Senator Mitt Romney of Utah has announced he will not seek re-election. The 76-year-old former GOP presidential nominee noted that if he served another term, he'd be in the Senate into his mid-80s. He called for a new generation of leaders and criticized both President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump. He released a video message outlining a range of what he described as critical issues, including rising national debt and the climate crisis. A federal judge ruled today former President Trump will be restricted on how and when he can look at and talk about classified information. The ruling appears to be mostly in line with restrictions special counsel Jack Smith wanted to protect classified information that may be evidence in the case against him. Trump is accused of criminally mishandling sensitive national security secrets at his Florida club and home after he left office. Democrats on Capitol Hill are pushing to increase tax breaks for people with children. Lawmakers want Congress to restore the enhanced tax break passed during the pandemic but was never restored. This follows a U.S. Census Bureau report that showed the child poverty level rose from 5.2% in 2021 to 12.4% in 2022. Republicans pushed different forms of restored tax credits, including a narrower version and a version that would have included credits for unborn children.
The benefits to America are extraordinary. You know, the idea that the richest country in the world wouldn't want to end childhood poverty for its own sake defies my imagination. I do not understand it.
The proposal to restore the credit failed last year. If approved, tax credits would be paid monthly. President Biden is focusing on his domestic agenda one day after Speaker Kevin McCarthy announced an impeachment inquiry. The president is convening a meeting of his cancer cabinet today. Representatives from across federal agencies will update the nation on new steps to end cancer, as well as announce a $240 million investment to fund cancer-related projects and research. The effort is part of President Biden's larger unity agenda. Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick told prosecutors they would have to wait to question the reported mistress of the state's attorney general today. Patrick is serving as judge in the impeachment case against Texas AG Ken Paxton, who is suspended. One of the grounds for that impeachment is reported bribery. Laura Olson figures into the case because prosecutors say Paxton had his friend, donor Nate Paul, hire her so she could move to Austin from San Antonio. Coming up on Mountain News at 5:30, phone scams are all too common, and one of the latest involves fraudsters impersonating two large phone companies. The red flags you need to look out for so you do not fall victim.
Plus, we are tracking chilly temperatures by Thursday and Friday morning as our fall preview continues. Those details on the way.